Nasal breathing during exercise. You got the why, now let's talk about the how. This week I'm giving you 5 ways that you can incorporate nasal breathing into your fitness routine right away. I'm Griffin from the North Star Body, offering movement and breathing solutions for your happier, healthier, and more active life. And if you didn't catch last week's video, we broke down the specific benefits of primarily breathing through your nose during exercise, why it's important and what the drawbacks are if you tend to use your mouth, especially during aerobic activity. So if you didn't catch that, I'm linking it down in the description below. Make sure you watch that so you understand why you should be doing these 5 things that I'm going to tell you right now. Assuming you know the benefits, let's jump right in. Reason number one, or way number one, that you can incorporate this into your fitness routine is to set 1 to 2 days of nasal breathing workouts per week. So depending on how often you train or you work out for fun, that's gonna affect how often you actually decide to commit to nasal breathing. But let's say you work out 4 days a week. One of those days, I want you to set as a nasal breathing only workout. Because to try to do everything just shutting your mouth when you're used to breathing through your mouth isn't really a sustainable goal at first. So choose one workout, and it can be a different type of workout each week. So maybe it's a cardio workout one week, and the next week you try a strength workout. And the idea is that you take as long as you need to. You recover as much as you need to in between sets, or you slow down and stop when you need to if you're like going for a run, for example. But the primary goal of that workout is that you just keep your mouth closed at all costs. So whether your goal for the workout is I'm going to do a certain number of sets, or I'm going to work out for X amount of time, and whatever you set that, the way that you achieve that is through not opening your mouth. So you can understand and kind of give yourself grace that, okay, I'm definitely not going to be performing as much as I am used to, as intensely as I'm used to when I'm breathing through my mouth, but that's okay because the goal of this workout today is just to breathe through my nose. And that brings me to tip number 2, which is to slow down and do less. So understand that the adaptation process takes some time. So when you start out, you're not going to be able to do as much if you're just breathing through your nose because it's going to be hard. It's going to be a challenge to adapt to that air hunger. You're going to need to take breaks. You're going to need to go slower. You're going to need to stop every once in a while, and that's totally okay. So keeping that in mind, it kind of gives yourself permission to work at a different pace, knowing that you might not be making the same adaptations in terms of like intensity or speed, but you're making a foundational adaptation that I would argue is more important than any of that, and sets the stage for all of that to be better later down the road, which is your nasal breathing. Tip number 3 is to use a nasal dilator or nose tape. So you've probably seen like Breathe Right strips or other companies that have similar strips where it tapes to the outside of your nose and then kind of just pulls the nose open a little bit to allow your airway to open a little bit more. There's also nasal dilators that are, and you can just type in Google nasal dilator and you'll see there are different brands, different types, different sizes, and you just kind of stick it in your nose and it opens it up from the inside. Almost looks like you're wearing like a bull ring, like a nose ring. But those aren't going to be helpful for everybody. So if your airway is compromised, like if you have a deviated septum or your nose is slightly collapsed, that's going to make nasal breathing way easier. And the way to tell if you might benefit from a nasal dilator is to just take 2 fingers right around the side of the middle of your nose and to just gently kind of shove the skin upward. And if breathing becomes easier for you when you do that, that means you'll probably benefit from a nasal dilator. Whereas if there's no change, then your upper airway, your nose, is probably already perfectly open and you don't really need a nasal dilator or any tape. It's not going to do anything for you. But if you're anything like me, the nasal dilator makes a world of difference when training, and I highly recommend it if you feel any difference when you go like this. Way number 4. This might be the most important, which is functional breathing at rest. So if you sit and you're just watching TV or reading a book and you're breathing through your mouth, Or maybe you're breathing through your nose, but you're breathing hard and shallow and fast and heavy. Then nasal breathing during exercise is going to feel near impossible, or at least really difficult. The more acclimated we are to proper breathing mechanics when we're not doing anything, proper breathing speed, so a slower breath, a gentle breath, all through the nose, then the easier it's going to be to control our breathing when we're exercising. But if we have any sort of breathing dysfunction that gets in the way of our breathing when we're just hanging out, then that's going to double when we go to exercise, because breathing is ultimately behavioral. And if these patterns are dysfunctional patterns like shallow, hard, fast upper chest breathing or breathing through the mouth are happening when we're just chilling and hanging out, then that pattern's just going to get exacerbated as we add a little bit more stress to the nervous system or to the body as we decide to exercise. So functional breathing at rest is going to set the stage for functional breathing at any other time in your life, be it during exercise, when you're under stress, or anything else. So that one's going to be really important. And tip number 5 kind of encompasses all of this, which is to just check your ego. And I know I mentioned this in last week's video, but it's worth repeating again, because a lot of us just don't want to slow down. A lot of us just don't want to put in the foundational work. And I understand that, because sometimes we doubt if it's even worth it. We only have so much time in the day, our lives are busy, and we think to ourselves, well, does it really make a difference to work on my functional breathing at rest? Or is it really worth it to, if I can run a 5K in 20 minutes, to slow down and, have a worse pace just because I wanted to shut my mouth? It is worth it. That's, if you want the spoiler alert, the end of the story is, yes, it is worth it. And you have to take a few steps back to take a billion steps forward. And again, I will tell you from my personal experience as a former mouth breather who couldn't do anything breathing through my nose. The nose just didn't work for me for breathing. I'm now at a point where I am fitter than I ever was, and movement is more effortless. And yes, the biomechanics piece is a part of it, but the breathing is equal to that, if not more. Being able to breathe through my nose and manage control of my breathing so I'm not overstraining myself. My nervous system stays fairly regulated during exercise, and I can maximize oxygen uptake and oxygen delivery. So the research is out there, but here's anecdotal evidence, and I know I'm not the only one. So those are your 5 ways to start incorporating nasal breathing. Set one workout per week where you're just going to commit to nasal breathing. Number 2, know that you need to slow down and to make this particular adaptation, and that's totally okay. Number 3, a nasal dilator if you feel your airways could use that support. Number 4, I forget number 4. Oh yes, functional breathing at rest, the most important one. So make sure that your breathing when you're not doing anything is naturally through your nose, that it's quiet and gentle, that it's slow and rhythmic, and that it's low and expansive with the rib cage, the diaphragm really involved. And number 5, through all of this, keep your ego in check and you will be just fine.